Hi, kindergarten scholars. So today for guided reading, we're going to be reading this story. It's called Katie and Katie. And if I look at the front of the book at this picture here, I see two girls. And I know that Katie is a name, so I bet both of these girls have the same name. So they're both named Katie. I wonder what's going to happen because I'm sure it can probably get a little confusing having the same name as someone else in your class. But I bet they'll be friends. That's my guess. So today when we're reading, we're going to practice those skills of either cross-checking, which is using the picture to help us figure out the word, or we're going to try to stretch it out. And so this book's a little more challenging. So Miss Music's going to help you with some of the pages because they don't all follow that pattern. And then we're going to do our best to use all those sight words we know and then stretch it and cross-check to figure out the rest of the words. So let's go to the first page. Katie loved school. So here's one of the Katies. Then a new student joined Katie's class. Her name was Katie too. Okay, so now we've met both Katies. There's two of them. The teacher said, Katie, your turn to, Usually the word we don't know is at the end of our sentence. So we need to use the picture and cross-check or stretch it out if that doesn't work to figure out what this word is. So let's look at the word first. So if we look at the word starts with the letter R. And we know that R says So I need to look for something in the picture that makes an sound. I see books, I see students, I see desks. But all of the students have books, and the teacher has a book too. And I know when we have books, we read them. Read. So it starts with an Eid. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's go back and read it. The teacher said, Katie, your turn to read. Yeah, that sounds right. Let's read it again. The teacher said, Katie, your turn to read. Ooh. Both Katies read. Oh no. So the teacher didn't say Katie and then her last name, or Katie with the red headband, or Katie with the pigtails. So they didn't know which Katie to read, so they both read. How silly. Melissa said, Katie, your turn to, Let's look in the picture. Let's try cross-checking first. So if we look at this word that we don't know, it says it's a J, and J says J. So we need to look in our picture for something that makes the J sound. So I can see a swing, I can see they're outside, I see a rope and a baseball bat and a basketball, but I don't see anything that says J. So I think I'm going to have to try stretching it out. So J says J, U says M says P says P. So now I need to put all of those sounds together. J, say it faster. J, say it faster. Jump. Oh, they need to jump, like jump rope. That makes sense. Okay, so now we need to read it. Melissa said, Katie, your turn to jump. Both Katies jumped. Oh no. Both of them read and both of them jumped. They sound pretty confused. Oh, let's find out what happened next. Billy said, Katie, your turn to, ooh, here's our word we don't know. It starts with a ol sound. So I need to look for something in the picture that makes an ol sound. I see a lot of kids, and I think those are lunch boxes. So Katie, your turn to lunch? That doesn't sound right. L does, lunch says ol, but reading Katie, your turn to lunch doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound right. So we need to keep looking. Katie, your turn to, how do we get to lunch at school? So if we are at school, we need to go to lunch. We have to get in line. Line says ol. Let's try reading that. Katie, your turn to line. That doesn't make sense either. We get in line, and then line leader. There's usually somebody at the beginning of the line that leads us. So maybe, and if you look at the picture up here, let's zoom in real close. This kid, I think his name's Billy, is pointing, and it says job chart. And I can see Katie's name right here, and it says line leader. So she has to lead the line. Lead says ol. So let's try reading it. Billy said, Katie, your turn to lead. That makes sense. Let's read it again. Billy said, Katie, your turn to lead. If they both read, they both jumped. I wonder if they're both gonna lead. Two line leaders. Both Katie's led. Oh man, and they do not look happy about it. If we look at their faces, they have their arms crossed, their hands are on their hips, they're both kind of frowning, and their eyebrows are up. They're like, bet they're feeling a little, maybe not angry at each other, but maybe annoyed that they're both getting tricked and they don't know what job they're supposed to do. So, here we go. I'm Katie, said Katie. No, I'm Katie, said Katie. The class asked, what are you going to do? Oh no! So now they have a problem they gotta figure out because even the kids in their class don't know what they're supposed to do. Oh, sounds like they found a solution. Let's read. I'll be Kate, said Kate. So one of the girls it sounds like they're gonna go by nicknames instead of their full name, so it's easier to figure out who's who. So one of them's gonna go by the nickname Kate, and the other one's gonna be Cat, with a K, not like the animal cat, nickname Cat. That's a great idea, the class said. The end. So now that we were able to figure out some of those words, even though we weren't super focused on reading today, we are going to focus on understanding the story. So let's go back to the beginning. We know that when we read, there's things called story elements. And story elements help us understand the story. So if you remember, one story element is characters. And so the characters are people, animals, and objects that talk. So the characters. So first, we should figure out who the characters are, but not just name every character in the whole book, because that's going to be too much for us to keep track of. We should think, who was the story mostly about? Those are the main characters that will really help us understand. So who was this story mostly about? And I think the title of this book is really going to help us, because I can see two people, and the title is Katie and Katie. So I think that the story was mostly about Katie and Katie, So those are our main characters, Katie and Katie. So now that we know our characters, now we need to figure out, where did the story take place? That's called a setting. The setting is where the story takes place. So we need to look through our book and see where most of the story happened. So I can see a desk and pencils and blocks. Desks we have at school, a lunchbox, a backpack. We usually don't have those things at school. Oh yeah, desks and a teacher. We have those at school. Let's check the rest of the book. Still see more desks and a whiteboard and an easel. We have those in our classroom. And we didn't get to play outside, but we had an indoor recess. And we had those scooters and basketballs. That was fun. And hula hoops, jump ropes. We had jobs at school too. And we walked in a line. There were students. So I think if we look, most of these pages can tell us that the story is happening at school. So the setting is school, and our characters are Katie and Katie. So now another story element is the problem and the solution. So the problem is what a character wants, something that the character wants, or something that the character needs. So we need to think, what did Katie and Katie want, or what did Katie and Katie need? So our problem was that they both kept getting called Katie, right? Because that's their name, and they didn't know who was talking to them and who they wanted to talk to. So the problem is, all the other kids and teachers kept saying Katie, but they didn't know who they were talking about. So the problem is those names, they kept getting mixed up on the name. So that's the problem. So now we need to think, how did they solve it? What's the solution? So if Katie and Katie is at school, and the teachers and the other students keep getting them mixed up, how are they going to keep people from getting them mixed up? How are they going to know who's talking to them, what people want them to do? And so, right here, remember their solution was to use nicknames. So one said she would go by the name Kate, and the other one said she would go by the name Cat. So they used nicknames. That was the solution. So let's review everything that we just talked about, because we talked about a lot. So we talked about our characters. So think, who were those characters? Yeah, the characters were Katie and Katie. And we know that those are the main characters because that's who the story was mostly about. And then, what was the setting? The setting was at school. And the setting is where most of the story took place. And last, what was the problem? The problem was that they were getting each other's names mixed up, Katie and Katie. They didn't know who was talking to them and what they were supposed to do. And then what was the solution? Yeah, the solution was to use nicknames, Kate and Cat. Nice job, scholars. So when you read at home today or this week, anytime you read a book, any story, I want you to try and think, who are the characters? What is the setting? What is the problem? And what is the solution? Because those things will help you be awesome first grade readers next year. Before we go, let's do a cheer. Let's do, which one haven't we done in a while? Let's do the Outcast cheer. Outcast up. 1, 2. So fresh and so clean, clean. Bye.